Eddie, what's up, man? Welcome to the Dad Edge podcast.
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
You bet, man. So real quick, up, up, down, down, left, right, A, B, select, start. What is that all about?
It's Contra, man. It is
Yeah.
the best video game, I think, ever in the history of video games.
Oh my God, man. You're
That's
not
a cheat
kidding.
code to get 30 lives and not just
Yeah,
three that they give you. So,
right. When I was reading that part of your book, I literally had a smile from ear to ear because, doing this podcast for a while, I think that's actually come up a couple times, that cheat code. And I've actually have said it on the podcast. When you said it in your book, I was like, oh my God, dude, that's crazy. Like, because that was one of my most favorite games growing up as well, Contra.
it's an amazing game.
Yeah.
Amazing game.
Yeah. You show it to the kids now, they'd be like, this is
Look
dumb.
at look at the pixels on this
I
thing. What
know.
do you? I'm like, sorry, man. That's what we had.
That's all we had. Yeah. So just to kind of start out, we'll get to your book, your message, and all your experience, obviously, in the teams and all that. But you grew up an only child.
I did.
Yeah.
I had a cat, and that was
Okay.
it. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
only child. So I got the only child syndrome, I guess you could say. Everything was me, for Eddie. Um, so I now I wish I had brothers and sisters for a bigger family. I wish I had a bigger family. But I think at the time, I didn't know any better. I can't remember. I'm sure there was times like I wish I had a brother, or I wish I had a sister, but Christmas time rolls around, every gift says your name on it. It's kind of like
Right.
pretty cool.
Yeah. You don't share anything. It's like,
Right.
this is mine.
Right. That's
Yeah.
also a bad thing too. It's like it goes both ways.
So you and I, so you grew up with this father that I know he was pretty busy, right? He was kind
Mhm.
of, he was working a lot, but he was also kind of into his hobbies and his sports. And he just you mentioned him in the book as a decent guy, but not necessarily the most involved early on in your life. I was wondering if you'd expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, my father was definitely not. He would be the typical family of divorce. I get you every other weekend, maybe once in the week, the weekend warrior. I call it the weekend warrior father. And I don't say that if it's legally, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But I think a lot of times men get in their heads like, well, I'm required to pay this amount to her. That is me doing my dadly duty, and we fail. And I was in this category. Is we fail that we miss the point is that we're supposed to be leading and growing them up the correct way. The problem is with that is most of us, and I say most, was brought up the wrong way. So we have no. It's like the blind leading the blind. It seems. At least that's the way I found for me is I had to when I got my children, I had to like relearn everything. I had what my dad had, and I don't even remember what that really was. I mean, that he was cool. We said a lot of jokes. There's a lot of sarcasm. We liked football, and to be and then after that, I think I was kind of like, what do I do? I would go to like, all right, what did my mom do with me? And that's not the role model of my mother. I mean, there's great things to take away from our mothers. Don't get me wrong, but we need that male figure and I didn't have God in the picture whatsoever. So I was just kind of lost. I didn't know what to do. I thought I knew what I did just because I was an older human, but I didn't have a fallback to okay, what did he do? So kind of like had to just wing it and kind of figure it out, and then finally got smart when I realized I was failing a lot and started reading some things, started asking some things, got involved in the church, and that started slowly, helping out. But for the most part, my and I say this with all respect, it's just I didn't have a lot to pull from, like knowledge wise.
You bring up a really interesting point, and a point that I've been talking about for a while on this podcast, which is our generation of fathers. Not to, I didn't actually even know my biological father until I was 30, and that's only because we actually met by accident in a Starbucks. And
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Dang.
Yeah, and I'm raising four young men now. So I have a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 9-year-old, 7-year-old, all boys. And the point that you brought up of our generation of the generation that precedes us, the fathers, so your dad,
Mhm.
my dad, I think they really identified with, well, I provide, and that's pretty much what I do. That's what my friends are doing, my circle is doing, and that's what society kind of expects me to do. And I think they didn't know what they didn't know. But I think this generation of fathers, we're very hungry and we're
Mhm.
very driven to show up very, very differently. But I think you're right, which is the gap is like, okay, I know I'm not going to do this, right? Or whatever this is that, but then again, I don't necessarily know what good looks like either. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I don't know. I mean, that's where kind of I go to the father of all, and that's, what does the Bible say what we're supposed to be doing? And unfortunately, that's watered down and that's taken out of so many things. And that's my go-to is, okay, how am I treated? What am I supposed to be doing? What is a man of God? Because that is he's the ultimate father. Okay, how do I emulate the best I possibly can as a human? Because it doesn't mean that we can't get things from other people, from books, from podcasts, from certain things, seminars, but it all comes from one source. It seems things that are true, they come from one source. And yeah, I mean, if we think about it, like if I think about, what does a dad do? Back when I was a kid, I was like, oh, he provides. He goes, he works, he comes home, mom takes care of him, and then he does it again. Here's your paper, because there was no iPads, right? Here's your paper. That was dad. I think, but that's not the correct way, at least. And maybe that's not, I'm sure that's not what everyone was doing, but that was my perspective. That's how I perceived it, is that's what he does. He works and he does whatever he wants.
And the funny thing is I don't really think we really expected much else. I mean, at least I didn't. I mean, I remember my dad, he was my stepdad. My mom was married for till the time I was from 4 to 6. I'm sorry, from 4 to 10. And I just remember he was really never around. He was traveling actually a lot for work. And I mean, but I didn't really expect anything different. I had
Mhm.
friends of mine, the same thing. I mean, I remember one of my very best friends coming home, like his dad was a blue collar worker. I can't remember what he was doing, but like literally what his dad would do every single night when he came home was sit on the couch for hours until dinner was ready. And that was like the norm.
Mhm.
You wouldn't really expect him doing anything different. But I think this generation, so even listening to your book, like your three kids, and I could just tell by the way you described them that they're super meaningful to you. And if I could, I'm just going to make a guess here, and I could be really, really wrong here. But I think it was in chapter 1 or 2, I can't remember. It was when you were going through buds and you were home on the weekends. And I think Kayla was just little, right?
Mhm.
And there's this part in the book, man, and I don't know if I picked up on it or if I'm just hallucinating, but you describe her as her sitting on your lap. She has two fingers in her mouth with her blanket and she's just cuddled up next to you. But there was this quiver in your voice as you read that part of the book, and almost like it was an emotional experience with you reliving it. To
100%.
so yeah, can you explain? Is that accurate?
About to tear up right now. Yeah, I mean, just what you said. I mean, you said it perfectly. Is I remember being, and I was kind of going back to what we were saying, as dad comes home from work, sits on the couch, and I understand the father, he's tired. He was working. Who knows what he had to deal with? An unruly boss, or a horrible coworker, or he was the turd. I'm sure there's a lot of things going on. There's on everyone's side, but that doesn't give you the right to shut yourself off from the rest of the family. You can't do that. That's where evil comes in, the separation happens. And I remember I just coming back from buds, I was smoked, physically and mentally drained. I mean, I can remember being able to make it, dropping my bag by the door because I couldn't carry it anymore, making myself go to the shower, grab something to eat, and then reverse that, and then go lay on the couch. And without fail, she would be watching TV or playing with her toys. She would stop what she was doing. I would say probably 95% of the time, she would stop what she was doing, grab her little Linus blanket, come up, lay on my couch, or lay on my stomach on the couch, and she would just watch TV. She didn't say anything. She might say like, "Hello, Dad, I miss you," but that was like her comfort space. And it was like, dude, like, my gosh, like that's awesome. And then I mean, that was good quality time with us. I mean, sometimes we play, but man, I didn't have energy to do anything. But if I look at it back now, I did have more to give. Even if it's like 10 minutes, get on the ground, play with her, which we did. And it was initially not a problem. It's more when I got custody of my kids, all three of them, and I was kind of, I would say, transformed from beginning stages of training to, you know, taking out bad guys overseas. You get changed within that period of time. And I was very calloused. I was not emotionally available. I was a train wreck, man. I mean, to the outside eye, you'd be like, man, that guy's got to figure it out. That guy did not have it figured out, especially, I mean, if I was just worried about myself and my career, I was at the tip of the spear. I was awesome. But when you bring in my kids and they need emotional and mental things, I mean, I was very lost. I didn't know what to do. I was very, very lost. But yeah, man, yeah, that felt good. You just telling that story. Thanks.
I was, so I was listening to that part, and, like I said, before you and I hit record today, I always really enjoy audiobooks over everything, but I really enjoy when the author reads his own book. And that part, I was just like, I literally, I remember I was out in my garage, I was working out in my garage, I was listening to the book, and hearing the tone of your voice, I stopped what I was doing. And I was like, oh man, I was like, I can just tell as he's reading this, he's reliving it. And that's something that, really hits us as men and fathers. I'll share this with you, back at you. I had an actual emotional experience with my 17-year-old here last week, and it hit me out of nowhere. And I didn't break down, but I got pretty misty-eyed talking to him and my wife. So last week, my 17-year-old got his driver's license, and we were in his bedroom saying goodnight to him, me and my wife. And I'm like, hey man, I was like, so what time are we leaving for school tomorrow? And he just kind of smiled, and he's just like, you're not taking me to school. I'm like, what do you mean? And I knew he got his license, right? But I was such in the habit, right? Such in the mode. And he's like, Dad, I'm driving myself tomorrow, and I'm driving Mason, which is my 15-year-old. And I was like, well, wait a second. I was like, yeah, I was like, does this mean that I no longer take you to school or Mason to high school? And he's like, and he kind of smiled, and I looked at my wife, and she smiled, and I was like, and I was just like, I was like, holy crap. I was like, Ethan, I was like, I gotta be honest, man. I wasn't really ready for this. I was like, I didn't know the last time you got out of my car, that was the last time. And I asked my son, I was like, I have a request, and it's going to sound weird. Okay. I want to take you to school one more time. I was like, and I'd love to pick you up one more time. And I was like, and I'm going to have a letter ready for you. And basically, I'm going to write a letter to him, because that chapter like snuck up on me big time.
Wow.
But I think it's super appropriate for this discussion. It's like these things, like you relive them, and you're like, holy shit, like that was then, and that's what was going on. And I wasn't even aware of what was happening at the time. But I think I've interviewed him now, man. I think it's like 34 Navy SEALs on the show. And the one thing that I've noticed is you guys in particular, you amazing operators, right? There has to be it's hard for the everyday guy, I think, to transition from like, going out hunting, gathering, working a full-time job, and then being like this, good mental and emotional and physical affectionate father. But for a SEAL, I would think that has to be even harder. Is that accurate?
I mean, I can't obviously speak for other people. I just know that the going from savage mode, I like to call it, to a true father, right? A true father, where you are required and single to do everything that dad and mom is supposed to do, and babysitter all does. It's like it was so overwhelming. I mean, I can't speak for, mom and dad, they come up together, everything's great, we're raising our children together. That just sounds like the greatest, beautiful thing in the world. I mean, I experience that now with my wife, but at the time, when I'm dealing with my stuff and my addictions and just trying to keep people alive, including myself, like I was, dude, it was a reality check, and it was a reality check I was not ready for, and I was not expecting, much like, your son getting out of the car for the last time. I wasn't expecting it. I was leaving to go to Afghanistan 2 weeks later, ready to deploy again, and not thinking I'd get custody of my children. And God said otherwise, which I'm so thankful for. But didn't was not expecting it, and I was not equipped. I mean, I was equipped, but didn't think I was equipped. And I mean, I realized, like, man, I'm going to kill these kids just because I didn't know what to do. Like, I remember, I think I talked about this book. Is like, what do you guys eat? I remember taking them to the grocery store. It's like, we
Yeah.
have a boy and we have a girl. Do you guys eat different stuff? Please tell me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, stop. Let's get to that aisle first. And like, I
Right.
remember, I mean, it was like, I was like, oh my gosh, here we are. Like, I have to actually buy the food. It's one thing to say, let's go to the grocery store. It's another when you actually got to pick the things off the shelf, put them in the cart, wondering if you're getting the right stuff. Are you guys going to choke
Right.
on this? Like, I mean, that's what it was.
Yeah. You're a child of the 80s, so you probably saw Mr. Mom when he
Yeah.
navigated the grocery store, right?
Yep. Yep.
Like, Kenny, did I tell you not to touch the grapefruit? Come on now. You know,
Dude, it's real.
your faith is just this, it's like this underlying foundation in how you operate. When was it that you really got grounded in your faith?
When I made every mistake and I thought I couldn't, thought it was all over. When I was on my, I was engaged for my second marriage, and I was drinking, pill popping, horrible father. I mean, I was physically there, emotionally and mentally. I was not there. I was checked out. I was overseas. I was anywhere but the present place. I would have to numb myself at night because I didn't want to deal with the emotions. I didn't know how. They were very foreign, for one thing. I didn't understand them. So I would just numb, 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 numb. And then I got, my fiance at the time, or my girlfriend, I can't remember what she was. It's like, hey, I want you to go to this camp. And I went to those Wild at Heart by John Eldridge, and I went there, and that's where I found my faith. But I was very, and that, I mean, there was definitely changes within that. I'm like, oh my God, there really is a God. I felt saved, and I started doing certain things, but certain things I kept doing. I wasn't fully obedient, and I was very lukewarm, which I would say the majority of Christians stay in for years after, and probably within the last, or cruising around a year or so, I've been 100% all in, very obedient. And I'm like, man, I wish I had this or knew about this stuff way back when. I mean, it still would have been hard, but knowing that my father was right there at any moment for me to just talk to him and get guidance, not that I didn't have it, but to, appreciate it more, sort of like dropping kids off at school. But now it's changed my whole life. It's changed my wife's life. It's changed our family's life. He is all. He is first. We put him first. Before, it was just a thing. Yeah, we go to church on Sunday. Cool. And then we're back at doing whatever we do and act like it never even happened, which was 2 hours before. And started to realize, like, wait a second, there's more to this. And I went through we call it deliverance or sanctification process, which is different than salvation. And then just started realizing strongholds and agreements, and exactly, what our enemy does look like, and what it can accomplish, and how it comes out in, anxiety, depression, worry, certain addictions. Because I noticed that my cycle was the same. I'd be good, and then I'd fall again. I'd be good, and I'd be fall again. And like pornography, drinking, pill popping, womenizing, just stuff like that. And I'm like, man, I don't want this anymore. Like, there's just, it climaxed to me having a pistol in my hand, like, enough is enough. And I remember hearing the voice, that's right, this is the way. And I'm like, I would never say that. But that is what I heard clear as day, that I should do it. And I pulled myself out of that, thank God. And I realized there's a lot more going on. I learned about spiritual warfare, and then really started digging into it. And and my life has been different ever since I've gone all in with Christ. All in. I mean, everything. And at first, like a while ago, I was like, dude, can I do anything? Like there's so many rules and regulations, and that's really not true. It's really protection. Just much like we say, hey, look both ways before you cross the street. Don't touch this stove, and this is why. It's the same stuff, and the things of the world are distractions and destruction wrapped up into one, and we fall into them all the time. Like, yeah, of course, go out and drink and have a good time, which I did plenty of, but don't get behind a car. Don't text this person, because you are just opening the door for bad stuff. And I was finding myself doing that. I'm like, I don't want this thing. Like, I'm tired of it. Like, I can't do it anymore. I don't want any more. So I went all in and started living the way I'm supposed, that we should all be living. And my life has never been better. I don't drink anymore. I don't go to the internet anymore. I listen to my kids. I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any means. There's tons of stuff that I still need to work on, but my life has just done a complete 180, man. And it's been the coolest thing. And every day I wake up and I'm like, is this real? Is this actually happening? This is crazy. I can't believe I did this. Like, what the heck was I thinking? So it's been awesome, man. It's been so, yes, it is. He is the foundation. He is it all for us.
That is so cool, man. I couldn't agree more with you. It's I went through a mentorship called Operation Timothy.
Okay.
And then I graduated from it and all that. Basically, if you're a Timothy, which I was, you have a Paul, so you have a one-on-one mentorship, and it takes you through scripture and you learn. It's a Bible study, and now I'm a part of what's called Operation Paul, which is now sharing that. I've as you and I both have, we've been that person, and we're also surrounded by those people, right, who are on their own journey. And it's interesting that you use the adjectives that you do of like, I no longer look at porn, I no longer drink, I no longer do this, and it's awesome, right? And for many people are like, how is that awesome? Like that's where I go and get my relief, or go and maybe
that's their bondage,
right?
I was the same way.
Yeah.
When I was told that wasn't the right thing to do, I was like, what? That's bad. I had no idea. I thought it was an anti-cheating serum.
Right.
I had no clue I didn't understand the darkness, what it puts in your minds, how it affects how we look at women, how we view them, how they aren't really a daughter of God, but they are just this object. And that's really how I look. And I didn't realize it. I mean, this is not justification, but you don't know what you don't know, which is the importance of sharing certain things with certain individuals, not to push it, but to drop that seed and let the Lord take it, water it, and let it grow.
Even that topic of pornography, I think that's one of the lowest hanging fruit and you talk about this concept of spiritual warfare. It's like, well, it's like an anti cheat code, going back to cheat codes. Right. But it's an anti, I used to justify pornography as in like, I'm actually kind of doing my wife a favor, right? I don't want to bother her with like all these.
I've said that.
Right.
I've said that.
I think every guy has, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to bother her with this. So, but I'm the same as you. I don't look at it anymore, and haven't for a long time. I'm in this, we're doing this challenge right now. It's called 433, which is 433 days of no drinking. And as of today, 162, we host a live, thank you. We host a live event every October. Lewis, called the Dad Edge Summit. And we had me and 21, kind of funny, the number 21 other men who decided to step into one full year of no drinking. And the reason I'm doing 433 is because from October to October, it's 365. But if I just finish out the year, it's 433. So I'm like, if I'm going to go all the way to the end of October, like, why not do 60 more days?
That's cool.
The interesting thing is I don't know if I see myself really going back to it, because now that 160 something days without it, I'm just like, it's not even on my radar really anymore.
Yeah.
Is that what you found as well?
Yeah, I'm at I think I'm at like just over 7 months now. And it used to be like, whoa, bad day, drink. Ooh, something's going on with the wife, drink, just to suppress and not feel. And now I'm actually feeling. And at first I was like, whoa, I don't know if I dig this. Now it's like, man, I don't ever want to not have this. I don't miss it. And for the people that used to know me, they'd be like, what? Like, I mean, let's go have fun for like a week, not just a day. Let's just keep going. Let's have fun. But I don't miss it at all, man. I really don't miss it. I'm actually, I can't believe that the life I had and now I am now, where it's definitely way more pure. I mean, I don't even cuss anymore. I mean, it comes out once in a while. It's just like I heard the Lord say, "Hey, man, we're gonna clean up our language," and I was like, "Roger that. Okay, let's if you say so." I'm like, "That's gonna be very hard, so I'm gonna need a lot of help." And I think maybe I maybe say a cuss word now. I think the last time that was a couple of weeks ago. Like I rarely.
Yeah.
It's like it's awesome. I'm like, I can't believe I used to cuss like that. I went to go see a buddy that I haven't seen in a few months, and he was like F bomb the way I used to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like, but I'm like, I'm not gonna come down. I'm like, oh my gosh, man, you just like you really notice it. It's like very like right there. And I used to be that way. It's just like, no, you're gonna go to hell because of that, or like you have to quit drinking. It's just like, hey man, that was just what I heard that I had to do, so I did it. That's it. I heard the Lord speak, hey, like, no more drinking. And okay, no more cussing. Okay, cool. And now I'm like, all right, I need you to listen to your wife better for communication. Don't try to get your point across. That's my next thing. And that's very hard for me. It's like the emotional mental piece is really hard, like physically and spiritually. I'm like, let's go. Like I will every morning I'm in my Bible or or some kind of spiritual building kind of thing for hours. And I have no problem with it. Where before, dude, I get to like two passages. I'm like, dude, get this out of here. I don't even understand it. This is misery. Like, let me read a war book or something. Now it's like I can't. Like I need it. It's like it's like my go-to now is where's my Bible? Okay, cool. Like
Yeah.
we're good now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need truth.
You and I are so much alike with our morning routines. Have you watched the series The Chosen at all?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Just not all of it. I think
Yeah.
the first season, I believe. I think we did. Yeah.
Yeah, we're on season 2 right now, my wife and I. So we're like halfway through season 2. It's fascinating though, because like I went through, the Bible study that I went through and all that, and now doing Operation Paul. But I think that series creates a little bit of character relevance for when you're doing your Bible study or reading the
Mm-hmm.
Bible. Because it's like when I'm reading like the book of Matthew, like I actually picture the guy who plays
So,
Matthew.
yeah.
It's just, I don't know. And I don't
I
know if,
never pictured him like that, to be
right.
honest with you. I never did.
I didn't either. I didn't either, but it's added some, I think, some zest and some excitement to
Mhm.
getting into the word, because it makes it just a little bit more relatable. I do want to ask you though, just a little bit more about like the drinking thing, and even like
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
just
yeah.
nutrition in general. So I watched your YouTube video on mindset, and
Mhm.
I actually loved it so much that I shared it with my 17-year-old last night.
Mhm.
It's the one where you have the 3
The
rings, right?
circles, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
circles. So just for the people in the audience, we'll put a link in the show notes for you guys so you can watch it. But it's mindset in the middle, family, faith, fitness, and underneath fitness, there's also diet, right? And I think, and I love how you described it. It's like, these 3 things, if one of them is off kilter, like if you have, bad blood with your kid or you have a fight with your spouse, it's going to impact your mindset, right? Many people think, well, as long as I'm working out, I can eat and drink whatever I want, right? And that's actually not true. And even
Yeah.
the quote you use in the video is, well, if I'm down in donuts, that's not going to be very good for my mental health. I'm going to feel
No.
lethargic. I'm going to feel down. Well, now being away from alcohol myself, you and me both, what I've noticed is my capability to take on more physical and emotional stressors and
Mhm.
obstacles is way higher
Oh
than what it
yeah.
was before. But I was hoping you could maybe give us some
Yeah,
points
we
on
we
that.
can we can all operate. It's like I think everyone would agree that I want to operate at my full potential. If I offered you 2 plates, like one's full potential, one's half, everyone's going to choose full potential. And really much is kind of I just named it the elements of mindset. And the reason that whole thing came about is I have a security company, and it used to be I would use this for examples for clients and say you got your house in the middle. It's not just one thing that keeps your house or asset. You can put anything in the middle that keeps it safe. It's not locking your door. It's not locking your windows. It's also, I mean, that is important, but it's also your alarm. It's your lighting. What area are you in? Are you in a gated community or not? Do you have dogs? Do you have firearms? all these things put on these layers to protect your house. It's not just one thing. We can't just say, oh, I've got locks on my door. Okay, you're safe. That's not true, right? The lighting piece comes in, the dog piece comes in, your neighbor, who are your neighbors comes in, where are you located in a city comes in. So all these things take place. So mindset's the same. I realize like mindset's the exact same thing. Is that I've got my mind in the middle, and then you got your faith, which is, like I said, the foundation. And then you've got your family, and then you've got your I had to use an F, so I did fitness and diet, but it's really your lifestyle. I hate saying diet. It's like it needs to be your lifestyle. Everyone's like, I'm going to do this diet. Like, well, you're saying you're going to quit, or you're saying you're going to stop. You got to. It's a lifestyle change, and all those key components right there really determine your mindset. Is if I go back to the donuts, if I down a box of donuts, which tastes great, I'm not putting down the donuts, but I'm going to feel lethargic, and I'm not going to really want to do anything. I'm not going to have that mental clarity. I'm not going to go tackle that task that I wanted to do, or want to go be with my kids, or have a real deal conversation with my wife. I'm just not going to want to. And then that could start other things. And then we get into this compound effect of all these things adding up and snowballing into disaster, where if I ate, something healthy, I'm going to feel better. I'm energized, and then I can tackle on whatever it is. And then your faith, I mean, that faith piece, that foundation is, the guys I mentor, I take them back to, what are you doing first thing in the morning? It sets up for your day. And, for me, it's like I get my coffee, and which I need to cut back on caffeine. Like, I know this, it's an ongoing process. Is get my Bible, and I'm just in the Word, and I'm just researching and praying and just getting my mind right, and then have a good breakfast, and then I go work out, and I've started my day. I'm ready to go, and I can take it on. But if I don't work out, or if I take in something not good, it's going to affect your mindset. And then the same thing with music, what we watch, what we read. If I'm reading books on, we'll just say football. If I'm reading a book on football, I'm going to be thinking in football, plain and simple. I remember watching Sons of Anarchy. I'm pretty sure I was in a biker gang after like season 4. I'm like, I think I'm like, should I go buy a bike? Like, what kind do I want? Like, we're influenced by these things. Like, you're watching Chosen. You said you read the Bible. It's influenced you enough to where you can actually picture things as you read the Bible. And it goes with anything. If I'm reading or listening to certain music, it is going to change me. If I'm listening to Korn, or like System of a Down, I'm not ripping on these bands. It is going to get me amped up. It is going to be fired up. Where if I take it down a notch, we'll just say like Celine Dion or something very soft, it is going to emotionally change me just by the tones, the words, all those things affect my mindset. So if I'm amped up and I need to calm down, I would usually go to a hardcore rock, but that's not probably what I need. I need to simmer down, and I might need to put on spa music or something. But these things, all these elements we do daily, they affect us. Like, if I have a Zoom call with somebody I'm not a fan of, and they're saying condescending remarks, it is going to probably affect my day. Where if I have a conversation like we're having now, I'm getting amped up, I'm getting filled. I would assume you are too. And we're going to be like, man, and I'm going to think about some of our conversation. Like, man, I really like the letter. Like, I'm stuck on the letter you want to write and taking them your last time. I'm like, man, I'm sitting here. I'm like, I want to go see my kids. That's positive influence versus negative influence. And it's all around us. Unfortunately for us, the world is very negative. There is tons of great things in this world, but we, especially on media, tend to gravitate towards the negative for some. Just our human nature. We go to that. It's certain negative things are readily available. We touched on the porn. And it brings guys to their knees because they go to it, opens a doorway, and then what's next? It's like, don't smoke marijuana, and because it's a gateway drug. I mean, porn. I look at it almost the same way. It's like, hey, dude, you're just opening it up for. And the problem is, people don't understand what they're opening themselves up to. What comes thereafter? There's no label. It happens. They just don't know it. And I was a victim of that. I'm sure you were too. We're no different.
Yeah, totally agree, man. It's interesting you talk about today's, what's going on in the world today. I'm looking at your shirt, looking at your hat, unafraid. And I think we're we've actually been in this for years. I think going back to even to the pandemic, where people are very triggered, very, very scared, very uncertain. And because of that, people are overwhelmed and stressed out. I think we've had generations of people overwhelmed and stressed out, but I think the past 3 years have been a true test of like, there's a lot that we can take. I mean, there've been unprecedented things that have happened. As you reflect upon this incredible foundation, Unafraid, what advice do you have for us as men, husbands, and fathers facing some of the craziness that's out there in the world right now?
That is, I feel, a week-long conversation
Yeah.
to address all that. But what's coming to my mind right now is not being afraid of that failure and taking that risk. And I say that, and the way Unafraid come up is I heard Unafraid was kind of forming, and then I would just start, things were just kind of jumping out at me. It's like, wow, we are very unafraid. I remember hearing when Trump and Biden were running against each other. It was a radio station that I listened to, and they did a survey or study or whatever. I don't know how they got their numbers, but what they said was 63% of Americans are afraid to talk about how they are affiliated politically. And I was like, I think at the time I was actually wearing like a Trump shirt or something. And I'm like, I don't understand that. Why should you be afraid to talk about your beliefs or what you believe? Because our beliefs are made from how we were brought up, where we lived, all the influences in our life, how we've been wounded, how we have triumphed, all these things, just like a mindset, it all comes into our life that forms our mindset and gets our beliefs, pretty much the same thing. How is that? It doesn't mean I'm right or you're right or I'm wrong or you're wrong. It's just like, that's my belief based off of however old I am experience. That's no one's fault. That's no one's fault, but we hold people accountable, which is not right in the first place. Like, well, you're wrong because you think that way. Oh, really? Well, did you know this, this, and this about my family? Like, I mean, we see this a lot in the homosexual community. Is like, well, that's just a gay person, or that's this. Like, but if we really dig in, we will see, probably most likely, and this is very prevalent, and that is a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of childhood trauma, and it doesn't make them right, but it's like, hey, there's a reason for all this. Just like certain things that I did, my dad did, his dad did. There's a reason for these things, and it's not fair to come down on other people. But I started seeing all this, people being afraid, and then I started, like, I heard friends like, yeah, I'm just afraid to apply to this job. I'm like, why? And I always go back to Wayne Gretzky: is you miss every shot you do not take. And he was obviously talking about hockey. Like, if you don't take a shot, you're going to miss it. So take the shot. And we see it over and over. And then COVID just compounded. Everyone's afraid to even touch each other, hug it out, go to church, do whatever it is. I got to wear this mask. I mean, you saw the pictures of people wearing bubbles around them. It's like, dude, if you forgot who you are and who created you, it's like, and it's just like, it goes into everything. Your faith, people are afraid to talk about their faith because they're afraid of a comment on Instagram. Why are you, do they know you? Do they have your phone number? You guys talk? Do they personally know you? And I still, I go to churches or a men's event, and I've had to change things up. The first thing I say is, does anyone know me personally? And usually I get to know, and I'm like, all right, cool. So whatever I say, do not take it personally, because I don't really sugarcoat thing. I'm very upfront and honest and speak truth based off of the Bible, and then my life experiences. And sometimes it's hard for ears to hear, which I understand. I've been in that place. I get it, but it doesn't take away from the fact of the matter. Like, that is truth. I'm sorry. Maybe that's what you need to hear, though, because the other stuff obviously isn't working. So yeah, it's just, that's where the Unafraid kind of came out. And I think it's very important to, whatever you want to do, whatever you're being led to do not be afraid because of, oh, I think Janet's going to say something over here, or that guy Mark over there is going to say something to me. It doesn't matter what you're held accountable to one, and they're not down here on this earth. it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I agree with that, man. So thank you for that. I I have another question for you as it relates to being a father. You come across to me, and even in your book, that I know it wasn't always so, but you've really progressed with this emotional IQ. You talk about frequently about being able to be empathetic with your kids, being a better listener for your wife, all these things that, quite frankly, they're hard for us to do.
They
And
are.
as a former SEAL, and you're one of those people that you're taught something tactically how to do it, and then you're able to go do
Mhm.
it, right? But as far as like increasing your emotional IQ, being a better listener, being empathetic with your kids, what do you tactically do? Like, how do you do that from a tactical standpoint?
Tactically, I want to run a lot of times.
Yeah.
I gotta be.
Thanks for
I
the
just.
honesty.
I just don't like the emotional piece. Like it gets. I
Yeah.
feel like I get like I'm on a roller coaster about to go down the big hill a lot of times. I've had to, and this is not a. I tell myself this, and we're good to go. I've had to work, and I'm still working. Is that okay? Let's look at the facts here. Let's look at the truth. Is I love my wife. We got married. She loves me. We have kids together. We're having a family. We're on the same team to become one. There's all these things. But sometimes it feels like I swear she's a terrorist. It's like, and I'm sure she probably feels the same. I've recently learned that I've had a habit where I feel like I need to explain myself in certain cities when it's kind of hostile environment, I guess you could say. And that's not the time or place for me to really. I wouldn't say voice my concern like I'm not important, but to defend myself or to put it seem like I'm putting it back on her. Is I just need to address the feelings. And this is one thing that I've recently learned that I use quite a bit now is what I think I'm hearing you say is that you feel, and then I repeat back what I believe I heard. And if I get it wrong, I'm sorry. I'm trying here. Let me try this again. I've used just what I just said, and it's been crazy. I'm like, what? Like
Yeah.
that works.
That actually
And
works. It's actually way simpler, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
so but that's one thing is like addressing the feelings and not really getting into the nitty-gritty until emotions are calm and we can sit down over coffee, talk about it, pray first, then talk about it. But yeah, it's just it took me a while, and I'm still coming out of this, is that I don't need to get my point across. Not to be like, hey, I'm right. It's not about that. It's just like trying to bring in the logic, I guess, and try to provide a solution isn't always the best thing to do at that moment. And
Yeah.
that's been a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, we have I have a coach that I work with in Dad Edge. He's one of my partners. He has a statement. He's like, "Would I rather be right or effective in this situation?" And he'll
It's very
gut
good.
check, and he's like, and sometimes he's like, sometimes I'm right, and I need to really stand my ground here. And sometimes it's like it really doesn't matter. What's most important right now is I'm effective.
Yep.
And that's just a great way. But yeah, I think what you're really talking about there is labeling what she might be feeling, like the emotion she's feeling. Chris Voss, I've had him on the podcast a few times. He was the former hostage negotiator for the FBI. He wrote the
Mm-hmm.
book, Never Split the Difference. And he talks about how literally, if you can just simply label her emotion, or he's talking also about from a business
Right,
perspective,
right, right, right.
hostage, but if you can label somebody's emotion, it actually de-escalates how how fiery they feel about that emotion. It actually
Mm-hmm.
calms them down just by validating where they're at.
It's
And
crazy.
he also talks about this, which is really cool. He really lets us guys off the hook, or anybody in conversation, is that empathy doesn't necessarily mean agreement. So
Mm-hmm.
they could be acting a certain way and you're like, I don't agree with that, but I'm going to be empathetic and label what I think that they're feeling. That doesn't mean I'm on board with it, but I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to at least do that, to connect.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to ask you,
It's crazy, dude. It's
yeah,
so crazy.
it's the simplest thing,
It's
right? It's the simplest thing. We don't have to
nuts.
overcomplicate it. You know, as we wrap up the show here, I really, I, I have two more questions. One of them is, I would really love for you to share how you go about raising sons versus daughters. And then the other question of, if we were to fast forward your life 20 years from now, and you really instilled some beautiful lessons in your kids that really help them navigate life in a profound way, what would those lessons be? But I really want to start with the differences in raising young men versus young women.
Um, that's a very good question. For my sons, thinking about it is what I need to do better is be more active, I guess you could say, is a good thing. Get out there with them, get dirty with them. One of my kids loves to go down to the lake, so we always go down to the lake, run in there, get muddy, get dirty. So being on the level, hands on, seems to be more effective. But I've also found that I need to bring back the listening piece. I still need to hear and still validate what's going on with them. Period. Um, I can joke with them more. Like they're definitely more. There's sarcasms allowed there. And then for the female side is listening. The list back to the listening piece and saying, "You look beautiful today. I love what you love," and just giving them that little love nuggets of, them going out the door. If someone's leaving for school, oh, your shoes look hideous with those pants. What do you think they're going to think about? Where I was like, dude, I love your shoes. They look good with those pants. Oh, thank you. And they're going to walk with confidence. Back to the mindset piece, right? Negative versus positive. So you just, no matter who it is, you got to treat them like a human, not like a kid. I mean, there is a time for discipline. There's a time for consequences and rewards. But just respect them as a child. Understand that they can bring into the equation. They can help out. Give them responsibility. Watch them level up. Let them fail. Let them fail. No helicopter parenting. And for me, don't speak at them like you're a drill instructor. Like
Yeah.
I had to tame myself down through the years. And just kind of, I read this in a book. I can't remember. I think you ever heard of the book Parenting with Love and Logic?
Oh yeah.
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 Okay. It's
We
like
actually, yeah.
consulting parents, like
Yeah.
consult with them. And that kind of changed me as reading. I was like, dude, I was very militant. Like, hey, do this, do that. But what there, just do it, but explain yourself why, because that's how they learn.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. It's
So
crazy.
true, man.
It's nuts, man. I didn't, the second question was,
Well, real quick, I want to make sure everybody heard that. Like, let them fail.
yeah.
In our house, we have a quote that we live by, which is fail fast, learn fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to fail. I remember early on, like when I was a early dad, that I was like me, just like a ton of other parents out there. It's like you just don't want your kids to fail. And it could be for several different reasons. It's just like you want your kids to be successful, or you don't want them to feel the pain of failure, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that is like one of the best teachers is
Oh,
to,
100%.
it's like, hey, make these mistakes now, like
Yes.
where the consequences are not nearly as high.
Yep.
That way,
Failure is not final.
right.
People think like if I fail, it's over. No, it's
Yeah.
not. No, it's not. You just got stronger.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Exactly,
But
man. Exactly.
don't try to fail.
Right.
But
So
don't be afraid to take the risk either.
exactly. Yeah.
Unafraid.
Unafraid. Yeah. You know what? When I pose this statement, this quote to people, and perhaps this is a beautiful lineup for this last question, which is, if you're 20 years from now, if you're celebrating, the incredible life lessons that you taught your kids, what they would be. But this quote that I'm sharing with you is something that I heard from a podcast guest quite some time ago, which is the definition of hell is meeting the man that you could have become when you're lying on your deathbed.
Ooh,
Oh yeah. And
dang, that is hard to hear.
it is, because it really illustrates that you left things on the table, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
risks that you didn't take. It was
Mm-hmm.
the chances you didn't take, the things that you left unsaid, the things you left undone, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But with that in mind, with your kids and some of the things that you're teaching them, raising them to be, what is most meaningful for you for these kids as they move actually into adulthood over the next, couple decades?
I think for me, a lot of them, especially my older kids that are out there, I got two out of the house, is I have to, like, I'm going back and repairing because of all the damage that I caused. But is looking them as not really as kids, but as they are going to, I want to make little leaders. what would I have wanted when I was a child? I mean, I was very hungry, and giving them that to make them stronger so they can lead. And I fail at this a lot. I talk to them and I look at them as a kid. The the parenting and raising the kids is it is one of the areas where I really need to watch what I say before I say it, because I just want to like say it, and then I'm like, whoa, that wasn't the right tone. Back to the emotional piece, right? So that has been the newest journey for me of working through things, is that piece. But I found it's just slow to speak, right? Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Slow to speak, and then just speaking at a tone that's respectable, and like, okay, if I'm their ears, what does this sound like? And just try to grow them, to encourage them, and to teach them about hard work, and that don't be entitled, all the things that we should be teaching, that the school doesn't teach, and it's not the school's responsibility. But if we want to trace everything back, that's we just discussed the world, or America a little bit, is I believe a lot of everything can pretty much be traced back to your house. How are you raised?
Yeah.
Right? Because that forms your beliefs, right? Doesn't mean you need to believe this or that, but I mean, it should align with the righteousness. It should, or else we're failing our children.
I agree, man. I love that you want to teach them hard work, that you want to teach them that grit, and to make mistakes and to fail, and to do those things. The other thing too is that you mentioned in there is going back and repairing.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard this from another podcast guest. He was actually he wrote a couple books, and he his name was so catchy, man. I had to have him on the show. His name is Figs O'Sullivan, obviously Irish guy, and he's a
Clearly.
right licensed family therapist. But he said something that I think might bring you some reassurance, and maybe even the audience some reassurance. And even as I say it, I'm reminded by it. Is the quality of the connection that we have with our kids is not in executing the relationship perfectly. It's actually in the repair. And I was like, I was like, explain that. He goes, well, if you think about it, it's so many of us as men and fathers, we want to do this thing so well, but yet we fall on our face quite a bit. And then we beat ourselves up mentally, emotionally for falling on our face. And it's hard for us to recover. He's like, if people even just knew just that, like, it's impossible for you to have any type of relationship whatsoever, whether it's friendship, relative, marriage, kids, whatever, without mistakes. There's always going to be mistakes. It's not about the mistakes though. It's about the repair. How did you repair it?
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And maybe perhaps there might be some unafraid themes in repair, right?
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Dude, I remember saying certain things, or like, hey, you messed this up or whatever. And I've learned that the going back and apologizing, if you overreacted, raised your voice where you shouldn't have, or yelled, that has played a lot. I never used to do that. Now I'm like, if I do, I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. This is what I was intending to do. My apologies, or whatever it is. Different for, boy, girl. And then I lay it out there, and they're always like, no, I get it. I understand. And it's like, it just makes things better versus not saying anything. And like, I want to, this has been a struggle for me in like learning to talk, because I just want to, like, hey, let's get to the point. Like, this will get the job done. This other stuff, we're just putzing around, we're just wasting time. And that's just not the right attitude to have. So this has been like something that I've been concentrating on, and it's been difficult, man. I've had to like redo a lot of things. This has been a very hard task to do, but I mean, it's doable, and that's really it is like, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners, and the same for me, as I've learned, is that we are going to make mistakes, we are going to fail, but there's a difference between those that accept that and those that do not. And the difference is daily we should be trying to better ourselves in somewhere emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or physically, is constantly trying to get better, and which is going to make every other section better as well as we grow overall. So it's like, you should be growing daily, like daily. And Eddie, some might be like, oh, Eddie, that's a lot. Like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Pick up a book, read something informative, get on their level and play. You're going to learn something. That is what we should be doing daily. And that's not too much to ask. That's what you should be doing. And if you're not doing that, I'm going to flat out tell you, you are wrong. And I was wrong for a very long time.
I agree. I mean, I think one of the most uncomfortable places to be is stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just a lot of people are just like, you know, it's like, oh, it's my, you know, it's comfort zone. I'm like, man, that comfort zone sucks
Yeah.
because you just have this looming feeling of like things are just not, they're not evolving. They're not operating the way you want them to. So I love that, man.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up here, where can men connect with you? Obviously, I know your book's on Amazon, but other resources that you'd like to share, please do.
Yeah. So after the Sean Ryan show, I learned about this Patreon page, which is great to get people there. And it's kind of like my media, but it's all stuff for what I just said, spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical, just to better yourself. And I post up there probably quite a bit. I do most of my posting there now. It's a closed community. I do, I call it more encouragement. So it's on all of my media, like at Eddie.Penney on Instagram, on eddiepenny.com website. Everything's there to lead you to Unafraid members. So that's where I would say to go if that's where you want to be fed, and it's trying to develop a community because guys need it. Because so many guys reached out after certain podcasts and be like, hey, I need help. I need this. So I developed or used that as a community to go in there and get fed and post good podcasts, good YouTube videos that just feed our brain and help our mindset. And then do one-on-ones through that as well. So that's where, if you go to any of my profile, all the links for everything that I got going on is there. And just, you don't need me, you need God, really. I mean, that's what I needed, and I think that's what the world needs. That's like the one thing we seem to like. Why can't we figure this out? Well, I'm gonna tell you why. It's very simple. We can see it clear as day, but yet at the same time we don't see it clear as day. So at Eddie.Penny, and then eddiepenny.com is the two places to go to.
Awesome. Well, guys, not to worry. We're going to have all the links in the show notes for you. All you have to do is go to thedadedge.com/Friday 101 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday 101. Eddie, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for your message. Thank you for your amazing book. You really put it all out there. That book, it's an awesome read. I encourage everyone. That. Yeah, I encourage everyone to pick up that book and read it at the very least. So thanks for coming on, my man.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, like I said, thedadedge.com/Friday 101 for this show. Go out and live legendary and unafraid. Take care.